covering sports for 30 years. It's one thing for an exhibition here, there, whatever, but you can't continue to be allowed to build a career without getting into the ring with fighters. If I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, Shannon.
Does ultimately boxing get damaged?
Well, I think so. But I think boxing damages itself left, right and centre. But I think the reputability and the credibility of some of these boxing sanctioning bodies is poor anyway.
Nobody can knock him for this. This is now business. This is business. For Jake Paul, absolutely crazy. Jake Paul is a domestic level professional fighter here in the UK.
Stephen A. Smith unleashes a fiery critique of the announcement, arguing that Jake Paul has never taken the sport of boxing with the seriousness, respect, or responsibility it demands. According to Smith, Jake's entire career has been built on spectacle exhibitions, viral marketing moments, and opponents who were never genuine threats, ranging from retired MMA fighters to aging athletes far removed from their competitive primes. He insists that this pattern disrespects the tradition of boxing and undermines the sacrifices made by real fighters. Smith argues that the proposed matchup with Anthony Joshua is the clearest example yet of how the sport is being mishandled. To him, using a world-class heavyweight champion as a backdrop for a YouTuber storyline reflects a painful decline in boxing standards.
He can't continue to get away with stepping into the ring against strikers for the UFC, basketball players, unknown boxers.
Simon Jordan voices deep concern about the Anthony Joshua versus Jake Paul matchup, stating that it has become a symbol of the problems plaguing modern boxing. He argues that the sport has allowed financial incentives to overshadow honesty, legitimacy, and integrity. According to Jordan, boxing is drifting dangerously toward becoming a spectacle-driven industry rather than a competition-driven sport. He explains that fighters and promoters now prioritize viral headlines, ticket sales, and social media traction over genuine sporting merit. Jordan warns that when events are built around entertainment rather than skill, the sport risks losing the respect it spent decades earning. He further emphasizes that leveraging a global superstar like Anthony Joshua to elevate someone who hasn't fought legitimate contenders damages boxing's credibility. This isn't an athlete working his way up through the ranks, it's a media product jumping the line through notoriety. Jordan argues that such matchups set a dangerous precedent. Young fighters may begin viewing fame as more rewarding than actual achievement, pushing the sport toward a model where popularity outweighs professionalism. Ultimately, he stresses that boxing must re-evaluate what it values if it wishes to preserve its identity.
But this to me is everything that's wrong with boxing. It's a money play, nothing wrong. I don't begrudge Anthony Joshua getting 50 million quid for an easy night's work. That's fantastic returns. Most people would take it. In the boxing world, Jake Paul is now a professional fighter. Whether we categorise him as a YouTuber or not, he's licensed to fight, which means that the governing body should be suggesting that this is not a fight that possibly they should be looking to sanction.
Yeah.
But they will, because the sanctioning fees will be enormous. Anthony Joshua will not lose his legacy like some people are suggesting, because no one will remember it in 2 or 3 years' time. If he embarrasses himself in there, they'll remember it. But if he goes in and knocks him out in 30 seconds flat, or turns it into a little bit more of a sort of Jake LaMotta, Raging Bull, holding him up for a few rounds and then knocking him out, then people will forgive it. He'll get a big bag of money, which most people in the world would take, and move on. And then we'll see if he fights anybody meaningful in the year. I mean, it is like sport has become. And what I got my head around on Saturday night was the entertainment value of Conor Benn and Chris Eubank. The fighting of itself, I could be all pious about it, but the entertainment industry is so prevalent in sport now. This is entertainment. This is going to have hundreds of millions of people watching it.
Of course.
And Anthony Joshua gets paid, and Jake Paul hopefully gets flattened.
Simon, I know the money's there, but does ultimately boxing get damaged?
Well, I think so. But I think boxing damages itself left, right and centre. But I think the reputability and the credibility of some of these boxing sanctioning bodies is poor anyway. But I think it does get damaged.
Even if it's an exhibition fight, which it might well be.
Well, then what's the jeopardy in that? If it's an exhibition fight, which it shouldn't be, if it's a proper fight, then Jake Paul is going to get demolished.
Johnny Nelson weighs in with a mixture of disbelief and concern, calling the matchup absolutely crazy and potentially hazardous. Unlike typical crossover fights that lean toward entertainment, Nelson points out that this is a real professional contest with real consequences. He praises Jake Paul's courage, acknowledging that stepping into the ring with a powerhouse like Anthony Joshua takes guts. But Nelson questions the wisdom behind such bravery, emphasizing that Paul has never faced an opponent remotely close to Joshua's caliber. Nelson explains that while Jake has shown promise and skill in previous fights, those opponents were nowhere near world-class heavyweight level. The leap from beating smaller, non-boxer opponents to standing across from a former unified heavyweight champion is monumental. He describes the situation as a blend of excitement, shock, and genuine fear within the boxing community. Nelson warns that this fight is not a game. One mistake against a man like Joshua carries serious physical risk. He concludes by stating that Jake Paul's ambition is admirable but incredibly alarming, as the gap in class, experience, and danger has rarely been this wide in a high-profile fight.
Because of Anthony Joshua's desire to be in the history books, to be a 3-time heavyweight champion of the world. To me, it shows me his desire. Pick up 50 million along the way. Nobody can knock him for this. This is now business. This is business. For Jake Paul, absolutely crazy. Jake Paul is a domestic level professional fighter here in the UK. Would he win a British title? No, I don't think so. So now they're putting this domestic level fighter in with a former heavyweight 2-time champion of the world. The weight is 245. So I think the last time Anthony Joshua was around that was when he bought Usyk. That means he's got to be fight fit on point, because his last fight he was 18 stone. I think it was 254 against Danny Dubois. So now he's basically saying you've got to get yourself in position, get yourself fit, and get yourself ready for fight. It's not tiddlywinks. This is a fight. It's not a push and a pull. You know, so as long as it's not a push and a pull, and don't put me down and don't touch me when they build up to this fight. You know, when McGregor and Mayweather, they had this little side of don't touch me and they build up to this. If this is a real, legitimate fight, Jake Paul is absolutely crazy. If not crazy, he's super brave. And it'll be interesting to see.
Well, what do you think? Yeah, because you said that before when we spoke about it being a proper fight or not. And Eddie Hearn and Paul's promoter, Nikisa Badarin, have both said in the last couple of days it will be a proper fight. And now you've heard the details, 8 rounds, 3 minutes a round, 10-ounce gloves. Do you believe it when they say that it's going to be a proper fight?
I do believe it because AJ's involved, and I think AJ'd struggle to he's going to take enough flack over this, but again, it's money talk. So I think AJ will struggle because it's an Owen situation. If he goes in there, Jake Paul lasted the distance. What does it tell you about AJ? Apart from he's just earned an extra 50 million quid. If he goes there and struggles with Jake Paul, then what to say about AJ? Your heydays are well and truly over. If he goes in there and knocks him out, then I'll say that's to be expected. So the glory, there's probably not much glory in it, apart from the haters of Jake Paul to say, right, I've got rid of this kid. I think he's very brave of Jake Paul. So now the problem child has got to believe this fight's actually happening. So now
Tony Jeff offers a measured, realistic perspective, reminding fans that anything can happen in boxing. He notes that preparation, mental discipline, and strategy can sometimes bridge the gap between two fighters who appear mismatched on paper. Jeff highlights Jake Paul's youth as an advantage. He's younger, potentially hungrier, and may possess better stamina and recovery. Even so, he admits that Paul is nowhere near Joshua's technical level. Despite this, Jeff acknowledges Paul's visible progress. He sees a fighter who has genuinely worked hard, improved significantly, and committed himself to learning the sport. Jeff points out that discipline, focus, and intelligent preparation can reduce, not erase, the gap between the two fighters. He adds that while Joshua's experience is undeniable, Jake's rapid development should not be completely dismissed. This viewpoint adds nuance to the debate, balancing reality with possibility.
Prime. Where Anthony Joshua, on the other hand, is, but I'm not going to say he's coming into his prime because he had some great wins earlier on in his career before he lost to Usyk twice. And by the way, when he did lose to Usyk, the last one was a split decision. It was a pretty close fight. So now this fight is matched, and I just want to look at the tail of the tape. Now looking at the age difference, we've got 28 years old compared to 36 years old. So I guess the advantage there goes a little bit towards Jake Paul. 28-year-old is better than a 36-year-old. But that being said, we're talking about experience and everything else. What comes with being 36 years old at Anthony Joshua's level. And then, like I mentioned, the heavyweights kind of seem to prime a little bit older. They'll come down to the height and the weight. This is the big one. 6'1" versus 6'6". 200 pounds versus 252 pounds. We've got a 252 pounder in Anthony Joshua. The reach advantage is a lot, which we would expect. Amateur fights, we can see that Jake's only had one, where AJ's had 43, but 43 of them are included at the highest level, Olympic level. And yes, He won the Olympic bloody gold medal, if I don't need to remind you. Then the pro record, Jake Paul has had 13 fights, lost 1. AJ has had 28 fights and he's lost 4 with 25 KOs. And the one person that Jake Paul lost to was Tommy Fury. Now, can we compare Tommy Fury with Anthony Joshua? Not at all. It's like night and day. So now I'm going to talk about the rules of this fight, and I'll give you my prediction, which is going to shock a lot of people after this. So, what are the rules? The bout will take place at a heavyweight, obviously. It's going to be 8 3-minute rounds. You might think, well, that's better for Jake.
Chael Sonnen asserts that the world will finally learn the truth about Jake Paul when he steps into the ring with a legitimate professional of Anthony Joshua's caliber. He believes the fight will strip away the protective narrative surrounding Paul's career, whether his success is real or manufactured. Sonnen states that this matchup is a turning point. If Paul performs well, he earns genuine respect. If not, the doubts surrounding his legitimacy will be confirmed. He stresses that this is a test not only of Paul's abilities but of how seriously crossover boxing should be taken. Sonnen argues that facing a world-class heavyweight forces everyone, fans, analysts, and critics, to confront the reality of Paul's skill level. He explains that the scrutiny Paul will face is beneficial for the sport, helping restore standards and keeping hype in check.
That it takes for Jake Paul to do this, as well as for Joshua. You know, this isn't Joshua's first time doing a spoof fight. He fought Francis. That was a spoof fight. Francis had never won boxing before, but we understood he has fought before. It was one of those things where when you got through it, like coming into the front side, I'm sure Anthony Joshua trained plenty hard for it. But coming out the back, he probably realized I didn't need to train for that at all. That was fun. That was a good time. I got to hear him call my names. I got to go out there. I got to be light on my feet. I got to lay on these combinations and then cut an interview and pump my hands over my shoulders like I accomplished something. What dreams are made of. And so Joshua did play those fights. It was with Francis, and this is a completely different kind of that type of fight, but it's still that fight nonetheless. Jake Paul has abilities to win this fight. A lot of them involve moral victories. A lot of them involve getting out of the first round. And a lot of them would involve getting out of the first 2 rounds and haven't been knocked down yet. One would be getting out of the 3rd round, you've only been on the canvas once, and you got up to your feet, you shook it off, and you're ready to keep going. Like, these things are all victories, but the fight that it's going to happen, I think it's a big deal for Jake Paul. I think it's a big deal for everybody involved. I think it's a big deal that Francis looks at that fight and realizes, oh, these things make sense. These things that make dollars, they make sense. That's his business. This was his opportunity that he missed out on. And now Joshua's gonna have a lot of fun. And overall, I see the fight being one-sided. And people keep saying, well, slow down, wait till you hear what all of the rules under exhibition clause mean. As long as they're throwing...
Dan Rafael shifts the conversation toward Jake Paul's growth as a fighter. He notes that Paul showed real improvement after his fight with Tommy Fury, better technique, better conditioning, better tactical awareness. However, Rafael stresses that these improvements still place Paul nowhere near Anthony Joshua's level. The difference between an evolving professional and a seasoned world champion is massive. Rafael warns fans to manage expectations. Training progress cannot substitute for years of elite-level experience. He adds that this fight will expose Paul's strengths and weaknesses. Facing Joshua will test Paul's adaptability, decision-making, timing, and composure under pressure, skills that cannot be perfected in sparring alone. Ultimately, Rafael reminds audiences that boxing is not just about punching power or athleticism, it is a craft built through years of mastery, something Joshua possesses and Paul is still far from acquiring.
His most recent 2 fights, those are so-called real fighters, but not for a long, long time. Chavez is a decade or so past when he was best, and Tyson had been retired 19 years and hadn't been, even when he was still an active fighter, hadn't been at his best over the last decade of his career. So they were guys with big names, but not threats. And the other fighters that he's faced have been a collection of either non-combat athletes, MMA fighters who've decided to come into boxing or had very limited experience in boxing. And then, a couple of guys in boxing that didn't have a lot of experience who were boxers, but had been off, for a long time. A couple of guys you never heard of before he fought those guys, and those guys you'll never hear of again. Of course, the fight against Tommy Fury, which I know he lost, but it was like a split decision, as my recollection says, and it was awfully close. And for my perspective is, whatever you think about it, Jake Paul certainly has gotten better since he fought Tommy Fury. He's certainly gotten better over the last number of fights. Now, is he at an elite, world-class level? Probably not yet. He may never get to that level, but so you got to give him props. He's taken on a guy that I spent part of my morning talking to different boxing matchmakers, people I've known for decades in this business, who have vast experience of building fighters and moving fighters and developing them, and they know a lot better than you or me what they're looking at. And to a person, they were like, they don't understand why Jake took this fight, because they think it's, one person used the word decapitation. So he's going to be a monstrous underdog against a massive puncher. But they're all.
Carl Frock examines the magnitude of the stakes for both fighters. He explains that Joshua is at a stage in his career where one misstep could intensify criticism of his legacy. Meanwhile, Jake Paul is trying to prove he belongs in serious competition. Frock describes the fight as a crossroads for Joshua. It's a test of consistency and risk management. For Paul, it's the ultimate chance to prove legitimacy. He frames the matchup as a collision between reputation, ambition, and the evolving nature of modern boxing.
Fake Paul is not a step in the direction of becoming world champion again. There's many people who could box. You're not going to make that kind of money, so let's just be honest with anybody else. So let's just be straight up honest about it. He's doing it all for the money. It's all about the money. I did say a year ago, when he got splattered by Daniel Dubois, that he's finished in boxing, he needs to retire. It's just my opinion, it's just my truth. I think he's done in heavyweight boxing at an elite competitive level. So that makes sense. I've been vindicated. He's now fighting Fake Paul in what will be a massive mismatch. If this is correct, and it's 10-ounce gloves in the professional boxing rules, 8 3-minute rounds, it's not going to go 2 rounds, is it? It shouldn't do. It shouldn't last a round. But we're going to have to wait and see, aren't we? It's hard to get your head around. It's hard to know what to say about this. AJ's obviously excited about it, about making some serious bunt. And Jake Paul's telling us that he's going to shut all the haters up by jumping in there with AJ. So what is actually going off? We're not going to know, are we, until the fight actually, until the first bell goes. We're not going to know what's actually behind all this. And we can't start throwing accusations of any sort of skullduggery going off, because we've got to take it at face value. It's not an exhibition, so nothing's pre-scripted. This is a professional boxing match that you can make bets on. So it's got to be a real fight. And if AJ goes in there with them little 10-ounce gloves on and throws the Ngannou 1-2 down the middle, I'm talking about the one that rendered Ngannou unconscious and almost snapped his leg. And Ngannou is a decent fighter in the cage. He's a good MMA fighter, and you saw him, he took Tyson Fury, what did he take him, 8, 9, was it 10 rounds? Can't remember how long it was, but he took him the distance and lost a close decision. So he's quite capable, but AJ's a big punching heavyweight. And
Ariel Helwani disagrees with those who believe Joshua's legacy could be damaged by this fight. He argues that business decisions are part of every athlete's career, especially in combat sports, where financial opportunities are limited by physical longevity. Helwani emphasizes that fighting Jake Paul does not diminish Joshua's accomplishments. Instead, it allows him to capitalize on fame, reach new audiences, and control his career's commercial direction. He explains that in today's boxing landscape, facing well-known or unconventional opponents is normal and strategic. Joshua's choice reflects professionalism, not desperation. Helwani insists that fans should focus on how Joshua performs in the ring, not the identity of his opponent. What matters is execution, discipline, and preparation, not the narrative surrounding the matchup.
I do think that is how that would ultimately go, though.
What's your level of interest, Mr. Connor Burks? What do you think about this? How do you think people will receive this?
Mr. Connor Burks, yeah, I am very interested in it. I'm already seeing the tweets and Instagram posts online that people definitely want to see this fight happen if Jake Paul is going to fight anyone. I can't imagine a fight that would garner more interest. It's a legitimate boxer in Anthony Joshua who has massive wins on his resume. He's much bigger than Jake Paul. He is a global superstar. And also, he's going to be a massive favorite in it. To me, it just makes sense from a standpoint of if you're Jake Paul and you somehow pull this off and you beat Anthony Joshua, you silence all the doubters out there. You beat a guy in Anthony Joshua that you're not supposed to beat. And then if you're someone that doesn't like Jake Paul, you want to tune in to see him get knocked out, you put it on Netflix. To me, it makes a ton of sense from a visibility standpoint, from getting the most eyes on it. Obviously, you're never going to top the Tyson thing just because of who Mike Tyson is, but right now, especially on short notice.
That's it for today's video. Stay tuned for more updates. Until next time.